Welcome everybody to Legal Tech Week for September 8th, 2023. We are gearing up 1 week away from our big gala 100th episode, 200th episode, 300, I lost count. Big event next week. We're going to be having everybody who has ever been a panelist on this program on. Well, we're hoping to. Caroline, you can't make it right next week, right? You're not able to do it.
I was wondering, Bob, if we could record like little excerpts that you stream, like we'll turn it into a show.
I think that would be great.
Wouldn't it be great? So everyone gets a little snippet. If anyone can't make it, we record like a little congratulations on the show type thing.
Yeah, well, welcome. We would love to have you do that. You can do a little message to us and how much you like us all and what good people we are and
okay.
all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, that's going to be next week. Turning to this week, we are a few things to talk about this week. You see who the panelists are. I am Bob Ambrogi. I'm the moderator. I write the blog Law Sites and have the podcast Law Next. And joining us today are Caroline. You want to go first?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline Hill. I'm the editor-in-chief of Legal IT Insider. Good to be here, Bob.
All right. And Niki Black.
My name is Niki Black. Nice to see you all. I am the head of SME and external education at My Case and Law Pace. I write legal tech columns for ABA Journal, Above the Law, the Daily Record, and elsewhere. And I also oversee and write the benchmark and the annual industry report that we put out over on the My Case and Law Pace side.
Stephanie, welcome.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't.
I forgot to pull my mic over here. My mic is like way over.
Yeah.
Here's my mic.
I'm like, who's ignoring
Help to have a mic.
Yes, I'm Stephanie Wilkins, editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News at ALM.
I haven't done this podcasting stuff before. It's hard to remember to have a mic. And Joe.
Joe Patrice, the senior editor of Above the Law and the Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast. And I am in the midst of a thunderstorm. So if I disappear, that would be that power went out, which it did last night. So, we're already on borrowed time.
Okay, I hope that's not coming my way. And last but not least, Steve.
Hey, Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads. And there's no thunderstorms here, but it is hot.
All right. Well, last week we did our kind of post-mortem on ILTACon, and Caroline was not able to be with us last week, and she wrote a piece, she wrote a few pieces from ILTACon, but in particular talked about some of her thoughts about the G100 and 200 programs they did and interview with the new president. So you want to tell us a little bit more about all of that?
Yeah, thanks. So Tony McKenna took over formally as ILTA's president on the 31st of August, although he got elected in May. It's the first time that we've had a non-American president of ILTA. So we talked a little bit about the geographic spread and that ILTA is going to be trying to grow internationally, which is exciting. But
non-American is kind of a derogatory term. How about like otherwise countryed or something like that?
No. So I'm announcing I'm going to run for the next presidency of ILTA with a "Make America Great Again" campaign promise.
Bring ILTA back to America.
We'll vote for you. So he gave me, the royal we, an insight into, obviously the G100 sessions are closed to business partners, so there's always a lot of interest in what they talked about, even more so than the other streams. And you will not be surprised to hear that they talked a lot about generative AI, shock horror. They talked about how they're going to be delivering it internally in their applications and what that looks like. So some of them talked about hiring people to come and work within the law firm and what sort of skills they'd need and what that looked like. And then, but Tony said actually he feels that that's the wrong approach or not his approach, and that he would prefer to rely on business partners, vendors who have the expertise, they're investing heavily, they're developing products. So there's like a difference of opinion in terms of what that looks like. And then He also came on to talk about there was a big focus on cost, as you won't be surprised to hear, probably. So he was saying that Copilot is as expensive as your enterprise licenses. And although it's being pitched as you got to have it, he's saying that doesn't really help when it comes to getting the money or pitching it to your CEO or CFO. So there was a lot of conversation within the groups about the cost and you know how you make sense of that. And there's a lot of talk about Microsoft and also just, I suppose, lastly, software costs generally. I think soon that there's you know, software costs are going up. They're already hurting, you know, and so it's just a conversation about, you know, realistically, how do they move forward when you're talking about hiring people, and it seems like perhaps that what they need, in my opinion, is to perhaps be a bit forensic, and that might mean having some honest conversations about which jobs get cut. Obviously there'll be new roles created, but I think perhaps some more honest conversations. But anyway, it was really interesting. I think that probably sums it up.
The interesting thing about Copilot is it's interesting to hear that they are talking about the cost issue, because so many legal tech vendors are already building their integrations with Copilot, and they seem to be pretty much banking on the fact that Copilot is going to get adopted by law firms. And it's kind of hard to imagine law firms not doing that ultimately. I mean, it seems that Microsoft is putting so many eggs in that basket, and some vendors are putting so many eggs in that basket, that it seems like it's going to be inevitable for the law firms to want to go down that road.
But I guess it's how they. So when I spoke to when they first announced the pricing, so it's $30 per person per month, which somebody recently pointed out to me. They said it's only $1 a day when you think about the amount of great things it does. But anyway, when they first announced,
is that a person at Microsoft?
Yeah. Only $1 a day, depends how many people you have, right? But someone was saying something has to give, right? That you can't just keep spending money. So I think they're going to have to be having conversations about how to justify what gives, how do they work out, you know, what they save. It'd be interesting to see if anyone hears of any sensible conversations about that, or calculations going on behind the scenes.
But we still don't even really know what it is. I mean, Copilot. I mean, it's still it's still more a concept than anything else. So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah.
Sure.
Any other thoughts on that? That may be that may be a good transition to Stephanie, to a couple of stories you guys had this week on law firms building their own chat interfaces. I mean, why worry about Copilot and everything else? We just build it ourselves.
Yeah, August has been the month of law firm chatbots. There's at least 6 off the top of my head that in August alone that were launched. Yeah, I think it could be that, but I think it also, this sort of was in line with my takeaway from ILTA, that there's sort of a more mature understanding of AI in the industry now. I think people are moving beyond, ChatGPT. They're understanding the concerns that go into it, and they're dealing with, part of the reason they are dealing with these internal chatbots is because they don't want the security risk. They don't want their information getting out. But it's just, I feel like every other day we were getting PR this week about a big law firm having a chatbot, which is really interesting. I am wondering how long it's going to be until people expect firms to have chatbots. And if you don't have one, you're behind the curve.
Or say you have one.
All right. Yeah. I mean, they're internal, so it's not like we can test them and see what they're doing, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting with that. I wrote about the Gunderson Detmer launch of theirs in August. My post was on August 9th. And at the time I interviewed them, like, I don't know, a week earlier or something, they had said, we're the first law firm anywhere to have our own proprietary chatbot. And then between the time that they were, that I put my post up and the time that I had talked to them, who was it? Denton, it was Denton's, right? I think Denton's put out there. Denton said they planned to launch one, but they were a little bit unclear on to when they were going to launch it. Although I think by now they must have launched it, 'cause I think it's
Yeah.
supposed to be by the end of August. But so, you know, I kind of had my story written about Gunderson being the first to do this, and then I was like, well, it's the first in the U.S.
Yeah.
maybe. You
Well,
know, the first 400 lawyer firm to do it.
yeah, you're
You know,
always wary at first because there's one that actually I was our international publication that picked it up. It's a Australian firm, Allen's, and they had come through saying we're the first, and they checked with us, and we were like, well, maybe they're the first in Australia. Don't say they're the first because it's everywhere. Yeah.
So at ILTA, Travis Smith, who
Yeah.
also say they're the first, and they open sourced the work because they're very big into open source. They're kind of they're quite big in the AI community. Those guys, I have quite a lot of respect for them. They open sourced the work that they were doing, and then got, you know, relatively upset that everybody else said that they were the first, because they were like, this isn't in the spirit of the thing. And but yeah, I think it's interesting. I haven't actually gone through and measured all the timings, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. The only
Us-
one
us-
on the August list we haven't mentioned so far was Davis Wright Tremaine. I think we've now mentioned like the 6 August ones. Sorry, Steve, I cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, I said a little facetiously that they say they are doing it, but you know, that is sort of the thing, particularly with law firms that offer these kinds of announcements, much like legal vendors, right? They say we've got these great, and maybe even Microsoft. We say that we're going to launch this great tool, but nobody's really knows, right? Except the people in the firm, and they're usually not talking. And yeah, one of the things I picked up at ILTA was this sort of the race for law firms to be able to proclaim that they have generative AI tools, and the pressure that could be placed on IT departments to come up with something AI, anything AI. And I just take these announcements a bit with a grain of salt, wondering how robust some of these tools are that they are proclaiming to themselves to have.
I had a great
I hate to be a skeptic.
yeah, I had a great chat with Casey Flaherty at ILTA about that. So we were talking about, a lot of people were focusing on the hype and the fact that the products are immature, and he was talking about how hype is a genuine inflection point, and hype and inflection points always come together, and that people who are sort of focusing on the hype, because obviously it's right at the top of Gartner's hype cycle, ready to slide down the trough, but just because of that, he was saying, you know, it's not a good reason for people to sort of lull themselves into thinking, oh, actually this is just all a big hype and it's going to calm down soon. He was saying it's the real deal, and we know this, right? We know this, but it's more a case of how you react and how you respond. And he was saying the products are immature, some of them won't work, you know, but that doesn't mean, you know, that there won't be like a next round with better investment, better products, and he was sort of encouraging people to take it seriously, but to sort of, you know, be learning, educating themselves, experimenting, not necessarily going out and buying every last thing, but just, right? So just saying, learn, look, teach yourselves, work out how you're going to move forward, work out what sucks, what doesn't suck if possible. But I just thought it was really interesting, because there was a lot of talk about, oh, it's all really hyped and the products are, you know, really new, and which is true. All of it is true, right? It's new.
I had an interesting similar conversation with Jeff Pfeiffer at LexisNexis, and he posed the question whether this is going to be like blockchain or is it going to be like the iPhone. And I think most of us would say it's probably going to be like the iPhone. And yeah, I mean, even with the iPhone when it first came out, it didn't do much, but it was cool. And then it started doing more and more and more. And some of the things that they tried with the apps worked, and some of them didn't. And will be true here, I think.
Well, Casey was talking about Mike, sorry.
Well, go ahead. I'll jump in after you.
Casey was talking about the Microsoft phone that was a failure. There was like lots of different things that have been failures. Sorry. Anyway, you go, Niki.
Well, I was just going to say, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I really agree with what Gates said, which is, you know, it was the PC, the internet, and I think, you know, and the bulk of my legal tech career has been focused on everything that followed the internet. And I thought all those are really huge changes, including the iPhone. But I also think back to whenever I give I've given my talks over the years about tech, and this just occurred to me as you guys were talking. I'll talk about Star Trek and how, when I was watching Star Trek: The Next Generation in law school, I left a final early to get to the premiere of a movie. Like, it got me through law school. I remember thinking none of this technology is ever going to be available in my whole life. And, when I give talks, I talk about how, we have so many of these things, the equivalent of so many things. But one thing that we really didn't have, we sort of had it, like the Alexa, but Alexa didn't work the way we thought that it would, right? Like in Star Trek, they will talk to a computer and you'll hear them sometimes work out a really complex problem. They'll also be able to throw up a hologram and visualize whatever it is and manipulate it and move it. But they will talk to a computer or interact with a computer, change the request, change, factors or assumptions, and get to the end result that they need. And I do that now with ChatGPT. Certainly, I'm not trying to figure out some sort of complex wormhole issue, but I am oftentimes trying to figure some issue out. And I will say, and what about this? And what about that? And what if I ask this? Or what if I change this? And it knows what I'm talking about. And it will go back to this original query and it comes up with these fantastic ideas. And I really do have a very hard time. And we have a little conversation we have amongst ourselves sometimes, but I have a real hard time thinking of it as, I've heard a lot of people that know AI say that it's just predicting the next word. I feel like there's a little more, certainly not claiming sentience or something, but this is like this unbelievable thing that we have available to us that we've never really had before. And it reminds me of sort of that next step in Star Trek, and that tech that sci-fi people envision truly is tech that comes to fruition. So I think that's important to keep in mind. I think it's a huge change, disruptive thing.
It's massive. It's massive. Someone said to me that they were comparing it. It was really funny. They were comparing it. They were going, right, well, someone compared it to the introduction of the PC, of the iPhone. And he said, and then he went, someone compared it to the introduction of fire, but I think that's taking it a bit far.
Yeah. Well, it's already done better than blockchain, so.
At least it does something.
They did mean the Kindle Fire, though, so it's not as crazy as.
Didn't mean he meant fire. He was joking, but that's hilarious. Imagine if he actually meant the Kindle Fire, and I was like, that would be embarrassing.
I also thought Fire Festival. Boris just said that Fire Festival. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I don't know about you, Bob, but my Bitcoin has not been doing much lately.
Oh, it's doing a lot. It's just not doing it in the direction I want it to go.
Right. I guess fair enough.
It sounds like Burning Man was the biggest show since Fire Festival. Seems like that was the successor to that one.
Who was the law professor that was at the former deputy solicitor general?
Neil Katyal was there. Yeah.
It's awesome. I'm sure there were a few other law professors there as well. But.
And he caused the whole trench foot controversy in 2023.
What?
No
idea what you're talking about.
Joe, you guys wrote about it. You can talk about it.
Yeah, he posted some advice because he escaped, when they still were closed off and people weren't able to get out. And he escaped and passed along information that some ranger had given him about how to wrap your foot to avoid trench foot. And instantly, bunches of doctors and military folks were like, that is actually how you get trench foot. Do not do any of this. And it became a whole thing on social media.
Yeah, he was like, put plastic bags under your socks and boots when you're hiking 6 miles in mud to escape this festival from hell. And then everyone was like, that's how people got trench foot in World War I. Why are
because it seals it too much. And so your sweat causes the trench foot then. So you don't want it to be wet, but you can't seal it in plastic because that actually means that the wetness that you're creating causes the problem. So you need to air it out. It's a whole new, it was a real rabbit hole of medical information we had to go through this week.
I feel like I'm going to walk around barefoot for the next week just to be on the safe side. This sounds disgusting.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the good reasons you listen to this podcast. You learn all these interesting things, right?
It's not
don't get trench foot.
It's not just legal
trench foot. Yeah.
Sound medical advice.
Yeah. I was going to say, I don't even know if this is at all relevant anymore. We were talking, Caroline, when you were first talking about sort of your conversation with Casey, I mean, we were talking, I think it was last week we've talked a couple times on the show about how there is now this tendency among all the legal tech companies to, just announce all these products that don't exist yet. And I don't know if it's just hype or not, but clear, in some cases they're in development, in some cases they're not, but they're definitely announcing products way before the time they would normally have announced them in the past, and way before they're ready for any kind of a commercial release, let alone even a beta release. And I mean, we saw that again this week with Ironclad announcing its Kai, which happens to also be the name of its co-founder. But it sounds like a really cool product, and they've got some videos and stuff showing how it works, but they're announcing it. It's not even out in beta yet. They're going to put it out in beta like next month or something, and then develop it. So this is just a real trend we're seeing in terms of companies putting this stuff out like this.
So I mean, yes, and I think part of the reason they want to get people involved in the beta, don't they? They want to line them up, and there's so much competition. Like people have been criticizing, like innovation teams that I speak to say that they've never experienced this like waiting list culture, right? The criticism of some of the newer Gen AI companies is that they've got this website with naff all on it, no information, and just like waiting list, and they're kind of trying to drum up this. And then with the more established players, I think they're trying to get people, drum up maybe some of the same excitement and get people involved in the beta. But I think, I mean, there must be a line, mustn't there, before which it's just bullshit, right? Like there must be, I don't know where that line comes. Like there's getting people excited, and then there's just announcing complete like vaporware, and I don't know where that line comes. Did you when you talked about it, did you sort of have any thoughts on that?
We had no answers. We just asked questions.
Yeah, I thought we were getting past it for a little bit in the beginning, January, February, it was just PR after PR with this AI splashed all over it. And I thought it had started to die down a little bit. And now between, all the chatbots and all the everything, I feel like it's ramping up again. I mean, it sounds like more sophisticated non-announcements, but it's definitely an issue.
Yeah. Dan was saying, don't expect mature product. That's what I was saying. I think these are all very immature products. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? Because we're very early stage in the market. I think to have a mature product, the one that did perhaps have a more mature product was obviously Case Text, because they were already working with large language models, and they pivoted and, worked with, they're one of the earliest to work with GPT-4 but I think mostly you can expect it to be really immature products.
Yeah. And I don't think the companies do themselves any favor when they pretend otherwise. I mean, if I'm ever talking to somebody and they admit that they're still in exploratory phase or it's early on, I respect it a lot more and am more likely to be interested in what they're doing, because I don't feel like I'm being sold a bill of goods.
Yeah.
We're getting the rain, and I'm about to trying to save somebody from getting soaked. Joe's rain is moving our way now. And Kathy Kenton is standing outside in it. Sorry, Kathy.
Yeah, no, I have the thunder here now too, so.
Were we talking about open source something before? I was thinking in my mind, there's a transition to open source, and then I can't remember what we were talking about. But I had a story this week on this partnership between oneNDA and SimpleDocs to put out this free software to automate NDA requests and negotiations. And I think it's actually what's sort of interesting is the whole concept. oneNDA is this attempt to come up with a standard NDA that everybody uses, because NDAs are basically all the same. And I mean, the language varies a little bit from contract to contract or from company to company. But the statistics are that companies are spending a ridiculous amount of time on these things, going back and forth on red lines over NDAs, even though they're basically really not all that different. And so oneNDA is this group started by Electra Japanese. I don't know how to say her last name, out of London. to kind of create a standard template NDA that, and just sort of similar to, Damien, Reel, and Sally trying to come up with tagging standards, but a standard form of an NDA. And it turns out there's like 4 different organizations in the legal space trying to come up with a standard NDA. If it's that hard to do that, I worry about when we start trying to get to other contracts. But the concept is interesting. And then SimpleDocs is a company that's now created an automation platform around that it's giving away for free. So anybody can go in and use this platform to generate an NDA using the oneNDA model. And it's simply a platform in which you just kind of go in and set a few parameters that you want to be kind of standard for your NDAs, like choice of jurisdiction or term, or a couple of, it's basically like 4 or 5 variables that you can set. And then everything else is standard. And you basically agree, you're not going to negotiate anything else about the NDA. You're going to go with the standard terms. And I don't know, I think it's an interesting concept in terms of standardizing common legal agreements. And then, good for SimpleDocs for also creating a free platform to help automate it and make it more available to people. But I don't know if people have seen this otherwise or thought about this at all.
Have they done an analysis of where the big differences come? Like, so presumably you could take lots of different NDA. I know you couldn't do the whole gamut, but I wonder if you could, compare how they differ, if they differ, and then where it's substantially. Is that what you mean? So they've got like a kind of drop down, and they're like different options in terms of the automation.
So essentially what they have is a standard agreement, and yeah, the only I don't even think it's a drop down. I think in terms of choice of jurisdiction, you can choose either arbitration or court, and then geographic jurisdiction, whether the courts of New York or wherever. Term, you can set a specific a custom term. I don't know if there's a drop down on that, but how long will this be good for? And then of course the party names are variables in those things. But what else was there? One or two other things, but that was about it for the variables. But I don't know if they have looked at how much they really changed. They did put together supposedly a study group of, GCs and law firm people and others to help kind of create this template. The template's been around for a couple of years now. 2021, I think, is when they actually released the first version of it. But the automation is the new part.
It would be good to understand how they differ, if there are, other than the things that are very obvious, options, whether there are substantial differences, or whether actually we're just sort of wasting a huge amount of time by spending any time at all on them, because it does seem to be a bit of a stupid exercise, doesn't it? If you could potentially come up with one, it would be beneficial. I don't see that there's any kind of competitive advantage, particularly in NDAs.
Yeah. I think it's. I think the interesting part of from talking to both the Electra about this, and also Preston. I'm blanking on Preston's name. Preston Clark, the co-founder of the SimpleDocs, is that even though these agreements are very much the same, they did have statistics on the fact that legal departments are spending large amounts of time on these, which are basically inconsequential. I mean, even once you negotiate the NDA, half the time it's not even enforceable anyway. It's kind of an odd kind of an agreement in the first place, but
yeah, it doesn't seem to be
trend.
Any competitive edge. And then if you did agree it, then presumably all the benefits that you derive from standardization, you could start to sort of use that time and potentially money to get to analyze, I don't know, different stuff. It doesn't seem to me to make any sense. But then we've been talking about standardization for ages, and it's very, very difficult to achieve, as we know, although Damien Reel seems to be doing a good job right now.
Yeah. Okay. Niki, you had a couple of stories. I'm not sure which one you want to talk to. Why don't you pick the one you prefer?
Well, I think I'll highlight my ABA journal article and then maybe touch on the other one because there's not, I
That's
don't
no
think
fair.
that-
You can't do both.
well, but the ABA journal article, fine, I mean, I wrote it and I like to
No, you
highlight my writing.
I'm
it's-
kidding, you know.
It's about, ABA journal article is about legal billing software. Anyone who reads my articles or who tunes in knows that I write about a different category of software each month. Lately, I've been alternating between more traditional software and new AI, generative AI type software. And so just to quickly highlight it, legal billing software is not exactly the hottest topic, at least because it's traditional, it's reliable. We've had this around for a while. Then it moved into the cloud. But the reason I write these every few years on these more traditional categories of software is because the market changes. And it's been, I think, 3 years since I wrote about legal billing software. And the market changes and there are some advancements and new tools available. So in this case, there's a lot of consolidation. Some of the companies got snapped up and then they were turned into more broad scale practice management platforms instead of just legal billing. Then there were new entrants in the market like LawPay Pro. Caveat, I work for the company Affinipay that produces LawPay Pro, but that was a new category that we put out on the market that was just legal billing software, sort of a bridge between payment processing and practice management. And then there were a few other ones that I covered as well. And it's, now that everything's in the cloud and there's only a handful of standalone legal billing software tools, but like I said, a lot of them have expanded into practice management as they've been acquired by other companies. So I just tried to provide a roadmap of the overview of this type of software and a roadmap of the tools that are available on the market and some of the price points to give lawyers who are looking into this software, who may not want to dip their feet totally into a full-fledged practice management tool, some legal billing software solutions that they might be interested in. So that's what that article covers. Anybody want to discuss that? Because that was super,
Is the
there's a
LawPay
lot
the
of
one
hot points
the
there.
best of the ones you reviewed?
I mean, I'm not going to offer my opinion on that.
Okay, just wondered.
Well, you did write. You're entitled as the writer,
Well, I feel like I have to refrain from offering my obvious opinion on that one.
So you're saying you're not too crazy about the LawPay one?
No, that's not what I'm saying. It's LawPay Pro, and y'all are welcome to check it out.
So I love the way Niki sort of had plausible deniability. I wouldn't write about it, although it's obvious which one. Good.
I mean,
That's good, Niki.
but y'all know that in those I write about competitors, like direct competitors in that column, So when I try very hard to have a neutral, to wear my neutral legal press hat, if you will, when I write about this software, and that's why I've been writing the column for 4 years now, I think, because I do a good enough job of walking that line. So I try to do that even when I'm speaking on this show. But y'all know where my heart goes. And then the other thing I just sort of pulled right before the show, I haven't read the article in depth. I do this sometimes more because it's a great talking point and a sign of what's happening, was a Gizmodo article about how I tweeted about earlier in the week when I came across it. 9 different stadiums are now using facial recognition software in order, for attendees. And so to replace tickets, kind of like you're seeing happen at some of the, like Delta, I think, does this and at certain gates when you're traveling. And I think this is when I tweet about these things, definitely a AI sign of things to come, or a sign of the times. I mean, it's just one more way that we're getting tracked, one more way that both public and private entities have access to our biometric data, and one more way that you can be tracked if the government decides to subpoena or otherwise access that information from these private entities. And some of them, I'm not even sure private. I think some of them are actually owned by municipalities. So, or at least they have a piece of some of these stadiums. So I think it's an interesting sign of the times, and it's just one more direction, sense of where we're headed. Our biometric data is no longer our data. It's just data that's out there that can be linked back to us. So it's kind of alarming.
They should broadcast on the Jumbotron everybody as they come in, as they do their facial recognition thing. Get to see everybody in the stadium.
What if you wore a fake beard, like, or like?
Well, what was it?
You
was it
wouldn't get
radio?
in.
Was it radio? It was Radio City Music Hall that
Yeah.
used facial recognition to ban lawyers that were representing adverse interests.
Yeah, that's in Madison Square Garden too, because they're owned by the same idiot. Yeah, he's banning
Well, you're never getting in there again, Joe.
You know, it's weird. I am not averse to him in anything. We'll see. But yeah, no, they are banning any lawyer who's averse to his company's interests in any venue. So even if, you know, they couldn't go to Radio City because the woman's law firm, she wasn't even on the case, but her law firm is representing somebody suing for a slip and fall in some restaurant he owns.
Right.
It's just really petty bullshit.
That just shows that it's crazy, right? Like it's sort of going to be there's going to be so many grey areas, right, in terms of whether they're breaching regulation, whether they're discriminating, whether. I just wonder if it'll actually work, but given that my facial recognition on my iPhone regularly goes, no, don't know who you are. It's better than that. I'm like, it's me, it's me.
Yeah.
Dave posted an interesting link in the comments, but I think my favorite part about that is the jump that the journalist made from your car's tracking to your movements to apparently everyone's having sex in cars too, so it's tracking your sex life as well. I mean, they must have interviewed a bunch of 20-year-olds. Maybe I'm getting old. I don't know. But I thought that was an interesting.
Maybe you
jump
just have
to
too
make.
small a car.
I don't know. I thought that was an interesting jump for the journalist to go from like they're tracking your tracking you in your car to they know all about your sex life. So
Well, that's why I live in New York City. We don't have cars. No one knows what I'm up to.
Do cars all have cameras facing the passengers? What? I don't even know about that. My car certainly doesn't.
That you know
not
of.
that you know of. Right.
Well, that's true. No, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure my car was built before they had cameras, so I'm not too worried about it in my car. Is that like a Tesla, or which cars have cameras facing at passengers?
I wouldn't be
even know that.
surprised if the
Tesla
newer
does,
ones did.
Tesla does.
My
Okay, so
car's-
Steve, be careful.
Yeah. Well, that Elon assures me that what it records, what the camera picks up, is not sent to Tesla. It stays. in the
What
car.
happens in your Tesla
He's
stays
just
in your
watching it
Tesla?
himself. Like it just goes to Elon.
What kind of advertising are you being hit with, Steve?
No comment.
Have you guys seen the bumper stickers that are starting to pop up for Tesla owners that say I bought the car before I realized he was crazy? Like a disclaimer people are putting on their bumpers.
That's amazing.
I saw his satellite go by the other day. You know, the Link satellite. I was out in the garden and it was beautiful clear sky, and I saw all these stars in a row. I was drinking some rum, and I just looked
You sure it was a satellite?
at it, and then Googled it. Thought, oh, amazing. And it was just this line of stars, and it was his Elon Musk's satellite going whizzing past, which was pretty amazing, I have to say.
Caroline just has the best life. Like I was just drinking more rum and watching satellites. I was at a regatta. I was at constantly like.
I forgot the regatta. That was
so good. But then I just
that was peak Britain.
Right?
You get some bumper stickers for I joined Twitter before he owned it. When it was still
Right.
Twitter. I saw this week that Walter Mossberg, who once was the most influential tech writer in the country, maybe in some ways still is when he finally speaks, he got off of Twitter over Musk's ADL craziness this week. In a very public statement. I was glad to see that. Of course, I'm still on there. All right. So, Steve.
Yeah. I'm
Are
not
you back in the
office?
I'm not telling you what kind of advertising I get. No. Yes, Bob. How can I help you?
I don't know. This show is just going to pot this week. It's not. I'm
Going
getting
off
all
the
these
rails.
messages from people trying to get out of the rain. I'm trying to help them. It's like,
Yes.
Did you have a story? You had a story about Back to the Office, I think. Maybe.
Well, no,
I'm hoping.
it was, well, if you had been listening, Bob, you would have noticed that my story kind of tied into the privacy concerns that Niki raised a minute ago.
I wasn't
But,
paying attention.
yeah, but so
Feels
this was a
like 10
story.
hours ago at this point.
Yeah.
That was our 98th episode.
Patrick Smith wrote a piece in the American Lawyer, and he was reporting on a new, I guess, piece of software. I don't know if that's the right term for it, but Goodwin Procter has put into place this ability for anybody to check whether anybody else in Goodwin Procter is in the office, or I guess by definition, not in the office. Which was kind of, I thought was kind of interesting because it brings into all the sort of workplace privacy issues and concerns that there may be with a lot of this stuff. And the comments that the people he talked to were interesting. I mean, some were really had a terrible adverse reaction. Oh, they're like putting chips in us. They're going to see where we are at all times and follow us. And other people were like, well, they already kind of know whether we're in the office or not, which is probably true. I mean, if you have to use a badge to get in most places. To some lawyers saying, oh, it's a great thing because, it's really good to know whether Joe is in the office or not at any given point in time, which I sort of found like really? Like you could call Joe and see if he answered the phone just as easy. But
yeah, I had that same reaction, Steve, to that.
Wait, this sounds like people who are in areas of the world where it's really easy to commute. I am not gonna call Joe to see if he's in the office and then begin my 3-hour LA commute. So I gotta be pot committed if people are. I don't know, like
it's the whole thing, I mean. So you say, okay, well, maybe that's okay, but a couple of years ago, I was at a conference and there was a vendor that was saying, I can use my platform on your email to determine if somebody is making the kind of remarks that maybe they make before they leave the firm, or they're making remarks that they're dissatisfied with something. I mean, and it's all sort of. To me, it's all kind of creepy. I mean, sort of logic would tell you that, if you're in the office, you're using office systems, maybe you don't have much of an expectation of privacy. But I sort of always did. I mean, I tried to be careful and cautious about what I would say, but I don't know. It just kind of rubbed me. Reading this, it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And plus I love the statement that he quoted. He got a statement from the firm, and the firm is committed to continuing to improve the hybrid work experience for all members of the Goodwin community. Like, we're going to improve the hybrid. Yeah, we're going to improve it. All right, we're going to get your ass back in the office. That's what we're going to do.
Well, yeah, I had the same reaction reading this. I mean, the firm's purported reasons for this: to improve the in-office experience and allow for better collaboration. Like, if I'm in the office and I'm wondering if Joe is in the office, I don't need to go to a public portal to see if he's there. I could Slack him or text him or G-chat him or any of the 10,000 other ways people are sending words at me all day long. I mean, I find it hard to believe it's not for tracking purposes.
I can see the other side, but I can also see that, there's a lot of pressure to go back to work now, right? Like there's a UK firm that's attaching bonuses to going back to the office, but there's a lot of tussle over it, and it's like, well, how do I decide how many days I'm in the office? And we've had this conversation so many times, but make the most of your time when you're in the office. And how do you make the most of your time? It's because you've got to be in with the people that are relevant. And I know there's different ways to communicate about that. There's email, which is crap, and there's this, that, the other. But I think actually, if you're going to make sense of your time, it's going to be when your team is in, and when you're going to be doing, or you're having client meetings or what have you. And you don't need to be in when you're doing your emails or doing private work or whatever. And so I do think that some of these apps where they show you, and perhaps I'm not familiar with the piece that you're talking about, so it might be that I would have had the same reaction that you have, but the apps that help you to manage your life and do it in a more sensible way, they make sense. Although in theory, like Steve said, when you get your card, you know who's in and out. But these ones that present it quite nicely visually, like there and there and there, and so you can manage your day, I'm quite a fan of. Although I get what you mean about it being a bit stalkerish.
Well, if
Yeah,
I
like
get
I-
that, like if you were gonna collaborate with a team, if the whole point of going in is to collaborate with your team, normally wouldn't you plan that before the day of? Wouldn't you not go in and be like, oh, I hope they're here today?
Well, right, but also like this kind of technology, like I've written a few about Maptition, which does some stuff kind of like this. This technology, though, is valuable. It's not like you find out at noon, oh, I wonder if somebody's in this office, and go look. It's more about you. It's in particular important for hoteling concept offices. It's about saying who's going to be here today. And, we talk about that with office space, but it's also true of coverage. Increasingly in a hybrid world, staff they're cutting back on, and the firm needs to know like who's actually here today, who we need to provide administrative assistance to. And so that's one part of that kind of stuff. And the other half, though, about your team being in, there's a bit about your team being in, of course, but there was a survey recently that basically the only thing that motivates anybody to go into work is knowing that their friends are there, whether or not they're on their team or not. And if you could have a situation where you could start predictably saying like, look, you guys all come in together, it would be great if you were coming in Mondays so that we could use your offices for these people who come in only on Friday. Like those sorts of things are helpful. And I understand the fear that it's surveillance, but in some ways it's a 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? Like either you come into the office at 9 a.m. every morning and you're there all day, and then that's a form of surveillance, or you get to work from home, but the trade-off is there's some kind of surveillance.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I'm not buying any of this. I disagree with everyone but Stephanie. I think that
I thought I said the same thing as
So
Stephanie.
Steve is on our team. Yes.
but
let me
ahead.
just make my point real quickly. Like, first of all, if you need to work with your team, as somebody said, you can schedule ahead of time. I think Stephanie said, you make sure everyone's in there ahead of time. If you need to see if your friend's there, you Slack them. Hey, are you in the office? Before you walk down the hallway to see them. If the administrative part of the office needs to know who's there, they can look at the swipes. Every large firm and even smaller firms have swipes to get in the building. They know who's coming, who's gone into the building. They know exactly when you arrive. So I call a bunch of BS on all of
But
this.
that's after the fact.
I disagree.
Yeah, they know who showed up. They can immediately look it up if they need to know.
Right after they show up. The issue with these sorts of
scheduling.
programs is knowing beforehand.
Right, and so
Well,
you make
and
sure
that's the-
you
that's
tell
the-
people you got to come in the
that's-
office Tuesday and Thursday, and
Yeah,
you
but
know.
This isn't beforehand, Joe. This is like real time. If you want to, you
Yeah.
can look up any given person to see if they're
Right.
currently
And
in the
who's
Yes, you
looking
can-
them up? The
Yes,
partners
yes.
are seeing the associates. That's what they're
Right,
looking up. Who actually
Yeah,
has the
right, see-
FaceTime?
Go into the office. You go, Joe.
But the purpose of the purpose of this technology is so that you can start monitoring and planning ahead. And it's not when you get in, it's that you've said, I'm coming in today, basically. And then, yes, in real time at noon, you can look up to see if that person is there. But that person has logged that they're going to come in that day beforehand. And that's how you figure out coverage. That's how you figure out where they're going to
That
sit.
makes no sense.
Where are you getting
lost
that from?
me.
I mean, again, I'm talking about Maptition and all of its competitor things. I don't necessarily know about this specific program, but all of the other ones in this space are about you signing in beforehand. That basically before you come to the office that day, you have to log in and be like, I'm going to be in today versus I'm not going to be in today. And that's what gets logged. And then it says, oh, they're going to be sitting in this office today. And you know that they're physically there. And that's
the only
And I don't-
difference here is
I
that
don't-
this is putting out a
Yeah.
public database essentially of who's logged that they're going to be in the office.
Right,
Who's-
right.
Who's
But-
right?
but so
Who
does-
is there right
But
now?
so does this, though. It's you say that, and then it's available to everyone else in the office that you have said that. That's
Anything involved in this one about future planning, or people have said I'm going to do this or that. This is
Okay.
just, we're seeing who's here. You can check up on anybody
Okay.
at any given time.
And I
Under the
mean,
guise
I will-
of better communication.
There used to,
Yeah.
I used to have a partner, and he would come in every Saturday not necessarily to do work, but to walk around the office to see who else was there on Saturday. So that coming from that experience, it gives me some pause to think there's now going to be a way for Charlie to do that without even coming in the office. He can just log on and see who's there.
At my old firm, there was a partner who used to walk around to see if the only women partner had left early to go watch her kid's soccer game. Like he would literally just go to see if she was there. But through this was both partners, you know what I mean? So it's like ridiculous. Like that happens all the time. And that my suspicion is that's what's going to be happening, not these planning things. It's more just FaceTime. Who's actually here when they're supposed to be.
The thing with Niki, the thing with your thing about you could check the swipes and you could text each other, but it's just the same as, that would take for a long time. I don't agree with the efficiency of that. I don't think anybody would go to the portal or however it is you find out who's swiped in and out. I think because it's this like readily, it's just like with any app, we all use apps in our lives that present us with information in a form which we wouldn't get elsewhere. We'd have to go and find it and we wouldn't do it, right? I
was saying that in response to Joe saying that it was for planning purposes in terms of staffing or something. That's what I meant about that, but go ahead.
And it still is.
Yeah,
to be clear, this is not Maptician. This is an internal thing they have built. It is not.
Sure, but it's the same concepts. Anyway, that's what Caroline's saying. I'll let her finish. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm just thinking that, you just don't. And I'm curious about this one that you're talking about, because I'm surprised that the only thing it would be useful would be for that day to see who's in. I can't understand why they wouldn't be using it for the types of purposes that, also for people to be able to schedule and plan and all of the things.
Maptician is more of a space planning and allocation so that firms can have less square footage and accommodate a certain number of employees and balance who's in and who's out on any given kind of a day. But still, they're capturing all that information. But on the other hand, they've been capturing all that information since 9/11. I mean, I remember before 9/11, you could walk into any high rise in New York and wander around and nobody would know the difference. Then all of a sudden you had to have a badge or you had to have an ID. And so, I mean, pretty much every major employer in any major city has known when you've come and gone ever since that day. And this is just taking it a kind of a step farther in terms of saying, okay, now we'll put that out there, make it available to everybody. I mean, I think it's offensive that they're doing it, and it's kind of nonsensical because, as you say, as I agree with Stephanie and Niki and Steve, that you could just put it out on Slack or email or text or whatever.
And that gives you a heads up. If I'm in the office, I want someone to be like, hey, are you in today? Can we talk? I don't want them to just suddenly know I'm here and then start appearing and intruding on my time. I might be in the middle of something. Like, how do you get anything done?
The problem that I see with it is when I think about it and listening to you guys, it's really the opportunity for mischief that can be done with this, where you would have partners using this tool to evaluate or influence the evaluation of a particular associate. Because it's now so easy to get your hands on the data and then report to the selection committee that, look at this, Niki was only in the office, on average 1 day a week, all the rest of us are here, so on. That, to me, that's the.
How about if we put cameras in every office and watch what they're doing?
But that was kind of always available in the pre-hybrid era. And now obviously it's different. But to Caroline's point, which I think is dead on correct, even if this program isn't about programming, the reason they're doing it is to evaluate whether or not they want to pre-program things. They're looking to see what the traffic pattern of people in the office are.
That's not what
to
the
figure that
article says.
Well, no, that's fine. There's zero motivation for it, is Caroline's point, which is correct. There's zero motivation for it if they aren't looking to save money on office space, if they aren't looking to lay off a bunch of staff people, if they aren't looking to save. Big Law Partners don't do anything without the opportunity to make money off of it. They're doing this because they see an opportunity to make money or save money off of it. And if this isn't currently for that pre-planning purpose, it's to gather the data so that their consultants can tell them, now what you can do is lay off 10% of your staff.
You're giving them a lot of credit. They're ego-driven.
There was a question in the comments that said, is Goodwin fooling anyone? And obviously the answer is they're fooling Joe.
No, and
No,
look,
it's
look,
yeah,
Caroline and I believe that Big Law Partners are way more evil than you all do. They are way more calculating. They are doing this for the money.
They're ego
you know,
driven.
No, I think they're evil
it
in
is-
tracking people because they want to, as the only one on this panel that has an in-office requirement, maybe I'm reacting a little bit stronger to this. I don't need them to know when I'm coming and going. I'm playing nice. I'm doing whatever. People don't need to microchip me.
I
No,
I
like,
agree.
I like
I agree.
Steve's expression, getting up to mischief, though. That I like. That's what
well,
he's saying.
it's particular. I mean, it's very relevant because we're having this debate primarily between younger lawyers and older partners about how much you need to be in the office and whether we're going to make you be in the office and whether your compensation and advancement may depend on whether you're in the office. Yeah, we had these tools before, but before we weren't having this argument. I mean, people kind of cared, but they weren't paying that much attention to it. Now it's become a very relevant thing. And
I think it
so you can and the hidden part of it, of course, is that you can have policies and saying, all right, you need to be here 2 days a week as an associate. But when it comes time to evaluate, are you going to say, okay, Niki was in 2 days a week, but Joe was in 4 days a week. So
Why do you
really,
keep picking on me?
I should go the other way around. Yeah, I should pick on Joe. Niki was in the office 4 days a week. Joe was in the office the minimum of 2 days a week, and we can only advance one, so it's going to be Niki. Sorry, Joe.
And that could
They
happen.
already have
Yeah.
that information from the swiping
Right.
in. And
No,
so,
but-
but I feel like Nikki's example of somebody would troll the halls to see, oh, did this woman leave early? This gives them the power to do that without even getting their asses out of their chairs.
I bet
Yeah.
you, I forecast eventually everyone will be using this and nobody will think twice about it. I think I get that in the
That's
hybrid.
what Dave said in the comments.
Yeah, did he? I didn't see. I think that at some point, oh, sorry, did he? At some point, like it's just going to be not even a thing, right? In the same way as eventually Gen AI, we're not even going to talk about it. It's just going to be something that does stuff in a really long distant future. At some point, I think that we just go to an office and we'll have an app, and it'll be just like any other app that we use, and people will be in or they won't, and we'll be able to manage our time. Or I just don't think it's going to be a thing personally.
And
Rule
that's
number
all-
one of
that's all
management
well-
is to trust your employees and let them
And that's
trust
all-
them to do
but
the right thing.
Where Caroline just said is maybe true, and if that's what it's used for, okay. But the thing I worry about is it being used for something else, and that is to advance unwritten rules a law firm may have with respect to associate advancement to partnership or compensation or any of those things. I mean, not just associates, but even partners. So
And it has serious potential for that and all the other good purposes for it that that data already exists. They already have access to it. It just opens the door to, like you said, mischief. I agree.
But is it in the same way as we were talking about Steve being targeted by senators? Is that the world that we're living in now, right? Like we are living in a very watched over world. But I'm not.
and
Right.
and I really thought I had like sort of a boring story for this week that would be when I just mentioned it briefly and it would be done. I didn't know it was going to cause this.
No, I was so glad you picked it. I
debate.
was going to, but I already saw it on the list. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
actually had looked at it too and was like, because I didn't have a story, I was like, oh, that one might be, and then you put it in there.
Right
Yeah.
now, everybody's trying to claim credit for Steve's idea. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, I looked and made sure he wouldn't be here first so I could claim it.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, we
I
are
put it
going
in
to be
there and I
very
deleted
carefully
it.
checking attendance next week for our
Ooh,
100th
good.
anniversary show, and we are going to be consequences if you do not attend.
Oh my god, I
I'm sure
can't
of
really
some
attend.
kind.
I'm going to be being taken away for my birthday, and I just can't guarantee that I'll have so.
We're going to be checking the automobile.
Will you be
camera,
wearing a funny hat?
I might be wearing. I might be
No,
sipping.
we will allow you to send in a little video clip from
Your car.
you guys
Okay.
from the car.
That sounds like
From the car. But yeah, I hope everybody will join us next week. A really good program lineup of people. How we'll fit them all in, I don't know, and what we're going to talk about, I don't know. Although Niki via Chat GPT came up with a really good idea for our theme for next week, so throw that around and see if that works. And hope everybody can make it. And until then, hope everybody has a good week. See
Yeah.
you next Friday.
Have a good weekend.
Great weekend.
Bye all.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks, guys.